Good evening, everybody. It's 7 o'clock, so we'll begin. Welcome to the meeting of the Children's Scrutiny Committee on the 18th of September. I'd like to remind everyone that the meeting is recorded for publication on the Council website. Item 1, apologies for absence. I'm sure everyone has seen the email from Councillor Manwar, and I'm sure the whole committee sends their condolences for Councillor Manwar having to attend a family bereavement. Are there any other apologies? No, thank you very much. Minutes. Now, the last time this committee met, it was a part of the People's Services Committee on the 4th of March. I understand all the actions from the old committee were closed down?
That's correct, Chair, yes.
Thank you. Were there any comments on the minutes? No, thank you very much. Declarations of interest. Does anyone have any declarations to declare? Councillor Kent.
Thank you, Chair. I've got a few declarations. I need to declare that I'm a member of staff at Treetops Learning Community and that my son works at Woodside Academy and that my husband is a governor at Woodside Academy. I'll finish there. Kent.
Any other declarations? I have one non-pecuniary interest. As of next month, I become Chief of Staff of the ICB. There are no direct items regarding the ICB on this agenda, so it is not a pecuniary interest. Item 4, unplanned scrutiny items and members' right of reference. I've got 2 items to bring up on this. Firstly, as members will know, at the start of the municipal year, I asked officers to write to both the Regional Lead for Ofsted and the Regional Schools Commissioner so they could come and talk to committee about some of our concerns and hopes for local schools and in the context of local government reorganisation. Both have replied positively, so we currently have an informal meeting for committee to meet the Regional Ofsted lead on the 7th of November, and we're hoping that now that the Regional Schools Commissioner has replied, accepting our invitation, that we will be able to pencil Jonathan Duff in also for the 7th of November. It would be helpful if we could send them any detailed questions in advance if there are areas where we want them to prepare data or facts and figures. So if any members wanted to help me sketch out some draft requests for things that we would like to see, I'm going to be in here at 6 o'clock on the 1st of October, the day we have the full council. So if anyone wanted to talk about draft questions, by all means, feel free to come and grab me in here. The second item I wanted to bring up was an item that the Youth Cabinet have asked me to raise. I went and saw the Youth Cabinet last week, who are a very impressive bunch of young people. But they were concerned that they felt that a number of them had less than positive experiences when they got to the age for work experience, where they felt that some employers perhaps didn't see the value of it, and perhaps it wasn't pushed enough. And they had a specific request that I thought was quite reasonable, that perhaps could the council produce some materials, maybe some videos, to help employers understand how easy it is to take on work experience young people, the benefit to the employers themselves. So maybe a video where perhaps the council walk them through. It isn't 10,000 forms, it can be done very quickly. There is benefit of doing it, and then perhaps even the council working closer with the NHS to see what we can do is to act as a backstop. So if there aren't enough work experience opportunities, us and other major employers create even more. Perhaps could we add that to the work log and ask Michelle, perhaps when we come to the next committee, if you could come back after reflecting on the Youth Cabinet request? Thank you very much. Item 4, Special Educational Needs Update, SEND, found on page 5. Michelle, are you introducing that? Or is it Andrew, you just diving straight in?
Can do.
Yep. Andrew, please.
Thank you, Chair. Okay, so we were asked to prepare a paper around LGR and the impact on SEND. It was initially, it's quite difficult to do in any granular level because we don't know who we're going with and what that population will look like. So we were looking at how we are preparing at the moment and the considerations that we're taking into account. We want a smooth transition, whichever configuration we go with, and we need to remember to maintain our legal compliance whilst also strengthening local systems. We are also hit with a perfect storm of government reform, and we don't know what that looks like yet either, with the white paper being due any month, I should say, rather than any day. But we know it's in the autumn term sometime. So we're asking committee to agree recommendations on page 6. The recommendations set out in the report are to recognise the statutory responsibilities of the LA in relation to special educational needs and disabilities and the commissioning of alternative provision, to scrutinise the proposal of the dedicated SEND transition plan within the wider LGR framework, and to support early engagement with families and schools to manage expectations and reduce anxiety during reorganisation. So it was this committee that asked for this report, and what we are focusing on is our statutory responsibilities under the Children and Families Act 2014, our accountability under Ofsted and the CQC inspection, and the delivery of education, health and care plans, tribunals and the transitions. We'll see in point 4, we maintain over 2,700 education, health and care plans in Thurrock, and currently 5.9% of our school-aged children in Thurrock have an education health plan, compared to 5.3 in the whole of England. So we're slightly above national, and we're slightly above our statistical neighbours. And the same with our SEND support. We do have a statutory timeline for education, health and care plans to be delivered within 20 weeks. At the time of writing this report, we were only hitting that at 37% of the time. This was based or due to the national shortage of EPs, and we have worked very hard to employ new EPs that have come on board this term, and also locum EPs. So we will be catching up on that. What I would say is this is a national problem, and looking at the Essex and Southend data, we compare very favourably to last year's published data, which I'm happy to share with you at some stage. It's just a mention of staffing there. We have 11 coordinators and 3 SEND officers in the statutory SEND service, as well as a tribunals team. 25 appeals are made to the first tier tribunal in the past 12 months, which is quite high for us. We don't usually have that amount, but I think that shows people's frustrations with lack of school places, and 73 mediations were carried out. What we're considering is the governance and leadership, and looking at creating a SEND transition working group, appealing to make sure that SEND leadership continues, the existing leadership continues to retain, to redesign and avoid less of expertise, and make sure that there's clear accountability lines. And we do have a good governance structure currently, and we'd need that to continue. You can see the things we need to remember to maintain our statutory duties, to make sure we're delivering the EHCPs and casework, and that we're continuing to improve our joint commissioning and partnerships with health. We have a local offer website which will need to be reorganised, that currently obviously states what's available in the Thurrock geographical area. That will need to change. There will be a big change to school place planning and sufficiency. We don't know currently who we'll be with, but there will no doubt be some maintained schools in that we don't currently have in Thurrock. So it's be looking at how that mixed economy of schools will affect SEN, if anything. We're looking at obviously delivering change management and support for staff, looking at new structures and our legal duties, and making sure that SENCOs, caseworkers and decision makers are briefed on updated governance. And then we go on to the implications, which the financial implications require careful financial planning and oversight to ensure the continued delivery of effective services. Transitioning to a new governance of funding models may result in initial costs associated with system adaptation, staff training and communication. Also looking at funding bands, how we fund our schools to how another local authority has funded their schools. There'll be changes for schools and AP providers, and making sure that resources are distributed equitably and efficiently. And ongoing monitoring will be necessary to manage the financial risks and sustain the quality of provision. And you can see that there are other risks and the mitigations in section 7. There are some risks around the 20 weeks timescale. They're already at risk, but we need to make sure we've got robust transition planning for that one. And a potential for weakness in data. We know that our data is fairly strong in Thurrock. We don't know where we'll be moving to and what their data systems are like and whether they'll be configured with ours and how accurate their data is. They're the big ones. And I'll leave it there if that's okay with you, Chair.
Thank you very much, Andrea. Questions, comments, members? Councillor Bass.
Good evening. Thank you for your report. Just obviously, I've gone through this report, but keeping in mind the LGR's different options and the stages we are, and if I heard correctly, you did mention there is no such clarity in what direction we are going. So where do we stand in reality in terms of what we have written here? And second thing is like how, because when we don't know on what direction we are going, so how we will ensure this smooth operational framework going forward?
I think that the best we can do at the moment is wait until we know in March, and then we'll be directly in touch with the local authorities involved, because what we don't have is district level data. So until we understand which districts we'll be working with, we won't be able to ask for district level data to understand what the implications are for us. So it's being ready and being prepared really to hit the ground running, isn't it, as soon as we know where we'll be positioned.
Councillor Bass.
Yeah, thank you. And on 5.1, you have mentioned we will ensure the existing SEND leaders will be retained. So how sure you are, because when we have no clear idea, like what it would look like, the new kind of structure. So how can we ensure these SEND leaders will be retained? And what assurance do you have?
We don't. What we don't have, not knowing where we're going to be positioned, makes that very difficult at the moment, because the districts, for instance, in Essex, are run in 4 quadrants, and so it depends where in the quadrants they fall to which staff they've got, which staff we have, and so it's really asking for continuity.
Hi, Councillor. I mean, I think the important thing here is the stability within our system at the moment, and I'm pleased to report that we've got really strong stability. We've got strong senior leadership in this area, and we're working hard to ensure that, we're bringing staff along on the journey, which is going to be significant change. And managing any change, particularly when it's as large as this, it's about clarity. It's about continually working with our staff to make them aware of. And, I think within Children's Services, we've been doing a lot of work around preparing for local government reorganisation. So our director talks regularly about this with all staff, actually, not just staff in SEND. So I think what we're trying to do is to ensure that there's some stability around that. And I think one of the things that, I think we've worked well on over a number of years is developing a system that is robust and can move forward. We have got some. So what we do know, Councillor, is we were looking at data earlier. We know that Essex in its entirety has nearly 15,000 plans. So we don't know how they break down yet, but we know. So we've got some of that high level information that we'll be using to try and start considering what it needs to look like going forward. I think always remembering, of course, that it's about keeping the child and the young person at the heart of what we're trying to do. That's the key. It's about making sure the child or the young person is at the heart of what we're trying to deliver. But we are going to be going through some significant change, and it's how we manage that change going forward.
Thank you very much. Councillor Raper.
Thanks for this. Can I just take us back to point 4, so Thurrock context? We've got 63% of ECHPs not being completed on time. I understand the reason for that. Have we got a sort of average timeline for them to be completed, the ones that aren't within the 20 weeks?
We do collect data on how late they are, and that is reported to board. On average, they're about 2 weeks late.
About 2 weeks, thank you. And the other one is the same section, 25 appeals made during the past 12 months. What were the outcomes of those appeals?
Varied, depending on what the appeal was for. So there can be appeals on sections of the EHCP, or there can be appeal on sections of the EHCP and the naming of a school. So that the outcome have been varied. Naming of schools has been again varied because tribunal is now minded not to name a school but to name a type of school. So the parent has been successful at their appeal to get a type of school named, but not the school they want named. So there's been some mixed outcomes.
And what were the ones that caused you the most concern within those? Don't mean be really specific, but
Yeah.
sort of the general issues.
The difficulties are the Section I placements. That's the difficulties because of the lack of local school places.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. Councillor Leakey.
Thank you, Chair. I was going to ask on appeals as well, but I think you've answered the question. Do you have appeals based on ESCP coming to an end? Do you have that kind of appeals when you're in your area?
We haven't had any appeals around ceasing. No, usually if a parent is reluctant to have the plan ceased, we won't cease. We'll work with them.
Councillor Byrne.
Thank you. Send. I join this committee because I get a lot of casework, lots of issues and problems with this. So our MP is not impressed with Send, we know. Parents are not impressed, so I get lots of casework. So are we actually failing, or are we doing what? I mean, I'm new to this. In your opinion, are we failing our kids, or are we doing a good job? So I just want to know what you feel.
I think it's an interesting concept about failure, isn't it? So I'll start with that, if I may. I think it's a system that is really struggling. And it's not a system that's just struggling in Thurrock, it's struggling nationally. If you look at the increased demand for educational healthcare plans, that has gone up significantly. So you've got that part of the system. I think the other thing that's worth talking about here as well is if you ask any of my most senior colleagues now in this particular area, what they will say is the complexity of need that's coming through the system now is like what they've not seen before. So we are getting children coming through who have got significant challenges. And actually the system's trying to work through that. So you've heard around the issue around school places. I think the team work incredibly hard around ensuring that the child is placed at the centre of what we're looking to do. I think, do we always get it right? No, councillor, we don't. But we do our best to make sure that children are supported through quite a complex system. So I think in answer to your question, I do not see us as failing. I think we are doing what we can do in a very difficult environment. So I think that's where I would sort of say on that.
Councillor Byrne, would you like to come back in?
Yeah, sorry, one more thing. Apologies, Councillor, Andrew's just reminded me. Our complaints are lower than our statistical neighbours, so just to give you another bit of reassurance. But I do understand, Councillor, that when you're dealing with this on a daily basis in the role that you've got, it can seem like, and I understand that, but we've got 2,700 plans currently and a number of children on SEND support. So I hope that gives you a little bit of reassurance, Councillor.
Councillor, do you want to come back in?
Yeah, sorry. Yeah, it's good to hear. Just because the thing that scares me is like a particular CEO says like ADHD and things like that, behaviour problems, naughty children. That some even headmasters don't believe there's a SEND problem. They don't believe there's an ADHD problem. So that, again, this is why I've got to hear from the experts, hear from the pat end. I'm here to learn because for me, it's mind-blowing that one person can say naughty children, another one can say it's a medical issue. So we've got to get all on the same path, haven't we, and all agree.
Councillor Kent.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you for your report. Obviously, working in SEND environment on a daily basis, I understand that the children obviously have to be at the centre of what we do. I could go on for ages, but I'm not going to. my concerns were firstly on, I know this is like we haven't got definite direction from government on where we're going to be with all the new reforms they're putting through yet. But we're looking at on page 7, where we've got legal compliance, etc., governance and leadership. Across different areas, you're going to be using, for instance, different softwares. How are we going to ensure that our software we're using talks to the software of the other area we could be partnership, we could become grouped with in the new reorganisation? So how do we make sure that data doesn't fall through the gaps? Is there any work we're doing on that? How do we make sure that the makeup of the SEN transitional working group, what is that going to be like? Things like that. How much is it going to cost to renegotiate joint commissioning arrangements with the various organisations? And also, have we got, and it might be short notice, but have we got timetables for when we're going to be transitional plan detailing, when we're going to set them up? And the other thing, just one more thing, is can we, once we've got more details, when we're putting things on the website and sending things out to parents, can we please make sure it's in really plain, simple language? Because any change is frightening, especially to a lot of parents that have got SEND children. And if we can make the language as simple as we can and make sure we have really good points of contact, so if they don't understand what's going on, they could pick up a phone or they could come down and see someone and so that we make sure that we are putting our children first. Thank you.
So I'll try my best, Councillor Kent, but there was quite a lot of things. So if I've missed some, please come back to me. So I absolutely agree with you around data. And we're currently going through a very large, change ourselves. So we're bringing all of our children's data into one system. So we're already going through some quite significant change ourselves. So I think we will be in a position once we're at local government reorganisation to say, this is the current Thurrock offer. Can I give you guarantees about how it will work with other local authorities? Unfortunately not at this stage, because I don't know who they're going to be. What I can say is that we're very minded around the work around data, so we will be looking to make sure as soon as we've got further information that we'll be working through that, and our data team are already alerted to some of that. So there are some conversations going on, not just around SEND, actually around the whole sort of change that's coming. So I hope that gives you a bit of reassurance. I, like you, we want to make sure that we don't get any sort of fall through sort of the gaps. I think you was also asking around the transitional planning. Clearly the responsible body for that is our local area partnership. So we've taken reports, we've discussed this with our local area partnership, and we will be drawing some support from that group. But I'd also like to give you some reassurance. We had Schools Forum today. Colleagues will know that's where we discuss, and you've got a bit about funding a bit later, that's where we discuss things that are going on around the sort of financial envelopes for our schools. And we've got a local author group. They'll be looking at that across the board. So I think for me, one of the key things we need to do is make sure that our parents are coming on this journey with us. It's all about timing though, Councillor, because in some respects, you have to get these timings right, otherwise people think, oh, they've been going on about this forever and nothing's happening, and it's that really. So we will be using our local offer and obviously our parent carer forum to make sure that we are doing what we can do to keep parents sort of updated. And apologies, I think you had something in the middle, and forgive me, I should have wrote it down really.
About communication to parents as we go through the process.
Yeah, the local offer. So I did pick it up, didn't I? I talked about it as far as utilising the local offer. We do lots of engagement sessions. We had an engagement session with parents last night, and wherever we can, we're talking to parents. All senior staff attend lots of sort of like opportunities to engage with parents. We've got an engagement and participation group, which will also pick up some of this work, and it's on their agenda for their forthcoming meetings. Thank you.
Thank you. So, Councillor Anderson and Councillor Hartstein, I'll bring in just a second. I think Councillor Kent raised a number of extremely important questions, and just following on from Councillor Kent's question, specifically about the data, have we got clear oversight the information systems that Essex and Southend use and the standard of which data is entered? Because the last thing we want is to discover that we suddenly inherit a load of vulnerable children into our system. And that if I think about passporting NHS records, it's all well and good to say, oh, the data systems talk to each other, but you discover certain parts of the mental health system record certain data, certain parts of primary care record other data, and then suddenly you bring it all together and you get an absolute mess of information, and it's impossible to find or pluck out individuals because they're not actually recorded in a standardised way. So are we confident that we actually have oversight for what Southend and Essex do in terms of how they record their send?
PQBI, that are now called PPI, I think, so that's our data team, are working already with our colleagues in Southend and Essex to look at which data systems they use for their children, as well as Michelle said, all the other data systems across their councils. And they will be aware. It's not us per se that know, but they are aware of which systems they use. As to the quality of their data, I think that's their next step. That's what they'll be looking at. We know that they use Capita for their post-16. We use Capita for our post-16. So there are some things that are easy, that will be easier to merge if we were to go with some districts from Essex. I'm not sure that I'm aware of every data system they use, but we're moving over to one data system, which will make it our transfer much easier.
So following on from Councillor Kent's point about communication with parents, at the point at which we are ready to form this new authority, would it not be wise to write to every send parent and say, this is the data we hold on your child, this is what we think local government currently does for your child, and give that parent the opportunity to say, no, this isn't actually accurate, this doesn't adequately reflect my child's experience. Is that something that's reasonable for us to do, Michelle?
I think we can give that some consideration, Chair. I mean, I think when we identify, and it's all this, isn't it, when we identify colleagues, then I think there will be ways in which we need to manage this, and that's an example of how we will need to manage some of this. I do pick up your point, Councillor Kent. Data remains, you know, something that I'm thinking quite hard about, actually, because you're absolutely right. What I can say is the fact that all our data will be in one place, I genuinely believe puts us in a good position, because currently we've got social care data here and education data there. By next August, all data will be in the same place, and I think that's a helpful way forward in relation to how we work with whatever the new configuration needs to look like.
Councillor Anderson?
Thank you, Chair. Thank you for the report. Just quickly, first of all, did you say that there are 15,000 EHCPs across Essex? So the report says that in Thurrock we've got over 2,700. So as a percentage of that 15,000, we're looking at just under 20%. But Thurrock's population as a percentage of Essex's overall is just under 10%. Obviously, there'll be differences in the age structure of different local authorities' population. I'm guessing that Tendring and Uttlesford have older populations. Does that totally account for the reason we seem to have such a disproportionate amount of EHCPs, or are there any other reasons?
I would say there are other reasons as well. They are very behind in their plans. So I think last year only 15% of their plans were finished on time, and there are some families that have waited longer than 52 weeks for their plan. So I think they have a different set of problems, a larger set of problems, and they are broken into 4 quadrants, and I'm not sure if that's been, which quadrants have the most EHCPs, but I'd imagine some of it goes on sparsity of population in some of those more rural areas. But yeah, they have their own particular problems around completion of EHCP. So I don't know how many, although we know how many they've got, we don't know how many they're waiting to still assess for and issue.
Okay, thank you for that. And then one of the recommendations asks us to scrutinise the proposal of the dedicated SEND transition plan. Is there a timeline for when that's going to be produced, and how are we producing it? Can we get a bit of detail on that?
Yeah, so we've started the work on that, Councillor, and as I said, we'll be pulling that together. I'm more than happy to bring it back to committee so that you've got an opportunity to really look at it. It will just look at more detail as to what's on here. And again, we're in that, it's that difficult place of when we know what it's going to look like, we can do more about the detail around that. So I just think it's to put a marker down, actually, Councillor, to say this is what we're proposing, this is how we think this part of our system needs to be taken forward, and we will bring it back when we've got more detail in relation to that.
Thank you, I'd appreciate that.
Councillor Hartstein.
Thank you, Chair, for letting me come in and speak. Thank you. I just wanted to go back a little bit just to pick up on, just to provide the committee with a little bit of reassurance and oversight in terms of, Councillor Kent, the parent carer and the communication with parents. And just to pick up on what Michelle was saying about the parent carer forum, and just to say that I attend those as the Cabinet member, and I attended the one last night. So just to give the committee a little bit of reassurance that there is administration oversight of those as well, in terms of picking up on any of the issues that are raised with parents, that there is oversight from me as well at those. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, portfolio holder. Right, I think we've exhausted questions. So thank you very much for the presentation. I think based on the tone of the meeting and the questions, in terms of recommendation, we would rather like the full transition plan to come back to us with a particular reference to data and communication to parents. Is that agreeable? So perhaps we can have a conversation clear outside of the meeting for when it's most practicable to do that. Councillor Raper.
I'm not sure this is the right time to raise this, but is it worth ensuring that in our work plan we have somewhere where once the white paper is out and you've had time to look at it, that you can come back and feed back to us, because there's possibly going to be a lot of significant changes in that.
Yeah, I think when we had the informal meeting with Sheila about 5 weeks ago, I think it was, I think she undertook that when the white paper is finally published, there'd be some type of briefing note for us regarding how we intend to implement it locally. So, yeah, I think you're right. If we can try and co-locate those things, that would make the most sense.
Yeah, because I just think with the briefing note, we don't always get the chance to ask questions linked to it immediately.
Certainly, yeah. Briefing note for us to absorb, but it should certainly come back here with this transition plan. Yeah. Wonderful. So, Paul, happy with those recommendations? Mm-hmm. Thank you very much. Thank you very much, Andrea. Moving on to the Youth Offending Service paper. Janice, is that you? Oh. Oh, Director, could you use your microphone, please?
Sorry. Yes, so obviously the government is driving change, and some of the things Michelle and Andrew have already spoken about in terms of Greater Essex and undergoing significant changes in local governance with a shift towards unitary authorities and a combined mayoral structure. Obviously, they aim to streamline service delivery, improve efficiency, and enable strategic regional planning. And for youth justice, emerging opportunities. Oh, sorry. Is that better? Sorry. So for youth justice services, emerging opportunities within the devolved structures offer potential for transformative change. And this report seeks to inform the committee of the possible challenges and opportunities for the youth justice services in Thurrock and wider. Obviously, we don't know what it's going to look like in the future in terms of the mayoral combined authority, but also local government reorganisation and what that structure will look like. There's an explanation there about devolution, which I'm sure you've all read already. Obviously, the white paper lays out a vision for the mayoral combined authorities as a regional strategic authority with expanded powers across transport, skills and employment, housing and planning, health and public safety, and economic development. So for our young people who are involved with the youth justice system, a lot of these areas will be pertinent. The aim is to empower local leaders to drive growth and improve public services. Greater Essex, so across the Greater Essex Greater Essex footprint, there are currently six youth justice teams: Thurrock, Southend, Basildon, Harlow, Chelmsford and Colchester. What we don't have is a breakdown of each of the kind of proposals in terms of local government reorganisation to be able to say, this is what it will look like if you have this structure, this is what it will look like if you have that structure. As we kind of move into that and we know what it's going to look like, we'll be able to measure that much more easily. As we move forward, it's obviously essential that we're working collaboratively with partners across Greater Essex to design a youth justice response that is tailored to meet the needs of its children and communities. So the current status in mayoral combined authorities is that it's been youth justice remains centrally governed in England with limited devolution to the mayoral combined authorities. Of course, that doesn't mean it won't be different here in Greater Essex, but at the moment that's the way it looks. Mayoral combined authorities can influence youth justice outcomes indirectly through local growth and skill strategies that address youth unemployment and NEET, so young people who are not in education, employment or training, public safety initiatives that intersect with youth offending and prevention, health and wellbeing programs that support vulnerable children and reduce risk factors. In terms of future strategic opportunities for youth justice and children's services, mayoral combined authorities, and as they continue to evolve, there are opportunities to align youth justice and children's services with regional priorities. These opportunities span across service integration, commissioning, data sharing, workforce development, innovation, and addressing socio-economic determinants. So I've kind of laid out below some of those things. So place-based service integration, so aligning youth justice, education, health and social care under regional strategies. Local commissioning powers, so mayoral combined authorities could lead regional commissioning for early intervention, youth diversion and family support, and by reducing fragmentation and promoting shared budgets and priorities, could enhance services delivery, improve outcomes for children and families. Data and intelligence sharing. Devolved authorities have the potential to develop regional data platforms that identify risk earlier and target resources more effectively, and which could support predictive analysis and evidence-based decision-making, enabling timely interventions for at-risk youth. Youth voice and participation could offer a platform for co-design services with young people, embedding lived experiences into policy and delivery. Workforce development, sort of regional strategies can support cross-sector training, leadership development and retention to children's services, investing in workforce development. Innovation and pilots. Devolution enables local experimentation with new models such as restorative justice, community hubs, integrated youth services, and it can inform scalable solutions and foster innovation to address youth justice challenges. Economic and social determinants, control levers like housing, transport and employment, all of which impact youth outcomes. In terms of challenges, most MCAs are still in an early stage of development. Powers over children's services are piecemeal and they're inconsistent at the moment. And devolution in the area of youth justice is described in the readings, and what people are saying around youth justice and devolution is that it's a long way off. Of course, there's the implications there. I won't read through all of those, so thank you.
Thank you very much, Janet. Questions, comments? Well, I'll lead off then. Janet, you made a comment that we can't really work out how many youth offenders we'll have in our system until we know what the shape of the authority will be. But I mean, this council has advocated for the 4 unitary model. I really struggle to understand how we can say simultaneously that this is the shape of the council that we want, but we don't know how many youth offenders we're going to have in it.
So obviously there's been a kind of a proposal put forward in terms of, I think, 4 unitaries and what that would look like. So the way the youth offending services are currently split up across Greater Essex don't fit with any of those models. So you'd have to literally look at every single area and then break it down. And they're not broken down in that way. So if it was broken down by every single area, it'd probably be much easier to do. But as soon as we know what that looks like, we can start to have those conversations about what that will mean for, if it was 4 authorities, what that would look like. If it's 3, what that would look like in terms of how many young people are open to the service, how many are kind of open to statutory services like children's social care, how many are looked after, how many are remanded, how many are in custody having been convicted. Once we know what the makeup is likely to be, it'll be much easier to have those conversations. What we can start to do is look at the 6 youth justice services as they are at the moment and start to have those conversations. So I'm having initial conversations with my counterparts in Essex and Southend, so we can have those conversations about what are the numbers looking like, but it wouldn't tell you what that would look like if it was made up by 4 unitary authorities.
I suppose that my nervousness is that I'm really proud of our youth offending service. We've got an excellent youth offending service in this borough. But, you know, the youth offending service has to do some really, really hardcore things to keep our young people safe. We know that people come predominantly from London, drug gangs, trying to prey upon our young people. We've got a great youth offending service in Thurrock. Depending on what council we become, we will have to do a lot more outreach with different schools. Will that take focus away from Thurrock? Depending on how many schools we end up in our mix, depending on how many youth offenders we suddenly port into our system. So I'm looking for reassurance that that the Thurrock YOS is not going to be lost in the new unitary structure, and I'm just not getting a feeling at the moment that the really in-depth thinking has been done to say this is the type of unitary we should be, and it's safe for our YOS to be in this shape of unitary. And I'm looking for reassurance here.
As you've said, Thurrock have a very, we have a very good youth offending service, or youth justice service as it's now called, and we meet regularly, and we've had conversations with Essex and with Southend. What I can't do is give you reassurance that it's going to look like this or it's going to look like that. What I can say is we're equal partners at the table with Essex and Southend when we're having those conversations about what do we do locally in Southend, in Essex, in Thurrock. So what are our different policies and procedures? So we're having conversations about making sure that we're really thinking about any policies or procedures that we're putting forward, looking at our structures, looking at how we run our services. So what are we doing really well and what can we share with others? So we're not saying, well, if Essex do it this way, that will be the way it will be. We're kind of saying, well, we have our strengths and there's things that we do that we think we do really well. And we want to make sure that going forward, no matter what structure looks like, that we're able to bring some of those good things with us. What I can't say is what that will look like in the future. It's hard to say that without actually knowing what those authorities are going to look like. But I think we have the right people around the table to have those conversations and to make sure that we're not kind of giving up the good work that we're doing.
Any other member got questions or comments? Councillor Anderson.
So the report mentions that youth offending services are governed centrally at the moment, and I inferred from something you said towards the end of your presentation was that at the moment, sort of looking at devolving powers around this subject isn't really high on the priority list at the moment. If that's the case, from your experience, do you think we would do a much better job if we had these powers devolved, or is it something that maybe we don't want? And if we do think we do a better job, is there a forum for us to make our feelings known to government and influence those discussions that might not be happening at the moment but might happen at some point in the future?
Janet?
I mean, some of this is really difficult for me to answer. I'm not an expert on devolution. I know what I've read. I've read extensively. I think if some things are done centrally, It pools resources, and it means that it sometimes can deliver better. You know, if we can pool our resources, we're all doing things well. So what are we doing well? What are Southend doing well? What are Essex doing well? So if we pool those resources across the Greater Essex footprint, so if you look at other local authorities that have gone into devolution, so for example, Greater Manchester, they've pooled some of their budgets around things like transport to make sure that young people can kind of have access to transport in the same way. I don't know what avenues there will be. I mean, I don't know that I potentially have any influence. I think some of those decisions will be made until the mayoral elections take place and we know who the mayor is. They'll have their priorities, whoever they are. I don't know if I can answer your question, if I'm honest, and I don't want to flannel you and say things that I don't know.
Councillor Kent?
Yeah, thank you. It seems from reading, it's a bit like we don't, like the previous item, there's still so much unknown because a lot of it is still centralised. So is this a case of once we know more, something to bring back to committee for an update on how things are progressing? Because like you say, it would be good to have the things that we're really good at with the Youth Offender Service and the other authorities that, or the other areas that we're combined with, what their strengths are to combine them to make a really good youth system. But obviously it seems to be a bit too early to go into a lot of detail at the moment, or am I misreading this?
I think you're right. It is something that probably we need to bring back. We're having these conversations across the whole of children's services with Essex and Southend and thinking about what might this look like in the future. And as I said, we feel we're a strong children's services right across the board, and we feel we've got a lot to offer. And I know Sheila's having, the DCS is having conversations with the DCS in Southend and the DCS in Essex. I'm having conversations at my level. And for children's services, we'll be leading on some of that stuff for Thurrock to make sure that our views are heard around children's services and the outstanding services we deliver, because we deliver very good services across the board. And so we're really clear that we want to make sure that that isn't lost in whatever the makeup is in the future. But I think you're right, we will need to bring something back once we know a little bit more. And alongside that, there's other things happening within children's in terms of, you know, the Wellbeing Bill, Families First, multi-agency child protection teams. There's a whole range of things happening at the same time.
Councillor Leaking?
Thank you, Chair. Thank you, Chair, and thank you for the report. I'm just looking at the report and I'm thinking about how many of our young people are open to youth offending team. I'm not seeing the data, you know, and how that will impact, you know, on the service delivery when we go into devolution. So how are we going to manage that?
Our youth offending team serves a small number of young people. So, for example, we currently have 5 young people who are looked after and open to our youth offending service. We don't have big numbers. But it's about making sure that we're doing the same things. We have a real drive around diversion and making sure that we can try and keep young people out of the youth justice service. And you're right, we do need to look at all that data, but we need to look at it in the round with Essex and Southend to get a sense of what that looks like across the board and what it looks like in those different areas. So again, it's what will that look like? But you're right, in terms of, I didn't put data in here, and I can always make sure that data is available to you. But the numbers are small. We're a small authority. We don't have a huge number of children open to the youth offending service. But I don't know what that's like, for example, in areas across Essex. I couldn't tell you that. But I can find that information out. What I can do is find out information about what the 6 youth offending teams, what do they have in the 6 youth offending teams. What it won't do is give you a picture of what it will look like in the new structure. But I can certainly find that information out, how many looked after children, how many are doing diversionary programs, how many are subject to statutory orders. I mean, that's something I could do if the committee would like that.
Councillor Byrne?
Yes, I think every scrutiny meeting we have now is going to be, could be, maybe, it might not be, because it's we're just throwing questions at you before, so it's very difficult for you. And for me, again, to get a head around it. But you could be, we might have the best service, but the service might be based in Harlow and you're not there. So it's, all this is just, we're going to come back, we're going to have nothing clear, don't we, at some point, and it's all going to keep coming back. So it's really difficult for you, it's really difficult for us to, well, for me anyway, I don't know if everybody else is on it, but it's all maybes and could be's, isn't it, at the moment?
But it's useful. I mean, it is useful for me to for us to start thinking about some of those questions you're asking. So thank you.
Just before I bring Councillor Bassett in, I know we say that everything is up in the air at the moment, but there are certain things we can do. So we can try and protect what we've got to make sure as we go into the new structure, our youth offending service isn't seen as a poor relation. So, for example, is the YOS still based in the Aspire building? So it's not the biggest or most fabulous accommodation. So what are we doing to make sure that regardless of the authority that we move into, people do see our YOS as strong, with capacity and rooted here, so it's not just seen as a part of, you know, a bolt-on to another asset? Because the last thing we want is a new council to look at saying, oh, that's a very tiny YOS, it's just in the top of another building, that can go and we can just centralise it, you know, wherever. So what are we doing with the things we can control now to try and protect ourselves in the new reality?
I am struggling to answer some of these questions, I'm not going to lie. I just think, as I said, we're clear. We have a strong YOS. I don't know how we protect it going forward until we know. Until we know, I can't answer these questions. I just can't.
Well, surely we can answer the question about the accommodation of the YOS and making sure that, regardless of the authority that we go into, we are going to be merging with more Essex authorities than not. That's just a fact. So making sure that the situation we go into, people don't look at us and say, well, it's a very small YOS in not brilliant accommodation, therefore it can go and it can just be moved into an Essex-owned building elsewhere. And therefore we lose the focus on Thurrock.
Shall I take that? So I think when thinking about this, if you think about where it currently is in Inspire is a youth hub, and actually it offers both the youth offending service and other young people right across the authority access to skills, employability, all of those things that we've all felt are real strengths for us going forward. I think one of the things that's going to be important here when we do go into this configuration is actually once we've got clarity on that, then it's about making sure that we're positioning ourselves to say, we have got a really good facility here. Do you know what, colleagues? It's not the best building in the world, but it delivers. And actually what's important here? Important things are how we deliver. So actually, I think it will be our responsibility as senior officers to be saying, actually, we've got some really good services operating out of here, and we need to almost champion that and say clearly that this offers young people really good opportunities around all the wider things that we want for our young people that are actually in part of the criminal justice system. So I think it's important around how we position ourselves and saying, we think this is a strength, we know we've got it in the right place, we've brought that together, it's had some great outcomes, and we present that going forward.
And it'll also depend on where we are, which local authorities that we're with. It will depend on districts, councils, and how that makeup is. Do we want something bigger that makes sure it can deliver wider? And as Michelle says, we're delivering other things. I don't think it's about the building. I don't think it's about being in the middle of Grays. I think it's really about being able to say, we're delivering the right services for our young people right now. We know we're doing that right now, and we've got things to share with others. And I think we're really ambitious for our young people, and we want the best for them. And I don't think that anybody in children's thinks that this is a done deal and we'll step away and just be subsumed into whatever comes next. We are really clear and passionate about our young people, and we want the best for them. And we'll be championing doing the things we're doing now. and doing them better. So if there are things we can learn, we want to learn, but we can also give to others as well.
Yeah, and I won't prolong this anymore, but yeah, there are plenty of things that we could do now to set out our stall for why we want, regardless of what the new reality is, the Thurrock Youth Offending Service to be structured in the same way. Yeah, the reality is if we have one youth offending service for the entire authority, let's say it's the option that Cabinet put forward, if it's Thurrock all the way to Harlow, no one would say it makes logistical sense for the one authority to be based at the very bottom of the new council. No one would say that's logistically sensible. So the only argument we would have to protect a YOS set up in Thurrock is if our business case essentially said that YOS should operate on a satellite basis and existing makeup should be kept as it is. So essentially what I'm looking for is that strong argument, that business case, that rationale for keeping the Thurrock YOS, protecting our young people where it currently is, because just sheer logistics, we don't want things centralised in that way, because as you said, it is a small accommodation, because it's a small service, therefore we can't absorb additional workload from other areas.
I suppose what I would say is we want our young people to be able to access the services that are available. So we want to make it easier for them to access those services, not harder. And it might be, depending on the makeup and what it looks like. I don't know what it'll look like, but if one bit's over there and one bit's over there and one bit's in the middle, that we may have to have 3 different services. I don't know. But once we know that, we can start having those conversations and really, of course, we'd want to champion Thurrock and the young people that are in Thurrock, but we are going to have to see it in the round of whatever that unitary looks like, to think about how we make sure all of those children are receiving the same service that we're delivering to our young people right now.
Councillor Bass?
Thank you, Chair, and thank you, officers. We don't want to feel you uncomfortable. Personally, I have full trust on you. I think, Chair, this whole exercise is being done purely because we have these items in our work plan. And it's not officers' fault, because when the authority has no idea in which direction we are going, so I think these questions doesn't really make sense to me, like when we are asking these questions to the officers. So, because no one has any idea which direction we are going. I think the only viable solution or advice I would say, for example, give, or if I'm somewhere, if I will be doing something. So we know at least there are 3 or 4 models. So if we are doing a report or if we are doing a homework, so we will go to these 2 or 3 different models, even though it's a very, very early stage and we don't know which direction we are going, and expecting from our officers to do something which no one, even the authorities or the seniors, has no idea which direction we are going. So I think the ideal, I wouldn't say ideal, but the best viable solution would be, say, for example, if we know there are 6 youth facilities or teams, or if we know like there are 3 or 4 different models, so we should go to these different councils or potential partners, asking them like what their plans are, and to see how we can work together and how we can improve those services, rather than just waiting and kind of just drafting something which really has no direction, rather than saying, obviously we know like our children's services are best here in Thurrock. Our officers done obviously utmost best, to protect our children and to see what is the best for their future. But practically, I think the only viable option would be to go back to the, say, for example, say, obviously, and again, it would be personal, it would give you an idea, but obviously it wouldn't solve the problem unless until there is a clarity. And if we, for example, if we have a plan, and say, for example, a different council has totally different plans, so it would be very, very hard to see, like, where we can mitigate these things. It's just a comment, you don't have to answer. But thank you. I know it's very, very difficult situation for you.
It certainly is a difficult situation. I mean, bear in mind, we've only got 2 other upper tier authorities to work with, and bearing in mind, we know that we're an outstanding authority when it comes to children's services. I don't know why it wouldn't just be sensible to get a basic MOU understanding with both Essex and Southend that regardless what the new unitary is, that everyone basically agree that an existing good, excellent service like our YOS should just remain.
I don't think it's that simple. I don't, if I'm honest. I think there's a lot of work to be done. There are conversations.
Right, any other comments? Vicky?
Sorry, I didn't think Janet had finished speaking. Sorry.
Oh, sorry, Janet.
I suppose what I want to say is, I'm really clear. We have a good service here in Thurrock. I can't sit here and say to you, it's going to look like this or it's going to look like that. I think we can have those conversations, but I can't compel Essex or Southend to agree to anything. We're having those conversations, we're keeping those lines of communication open, and we're trying to work together to the best outcome for all our children. We're not the only ones that are delivering an outstanding service, so we can't just say our way's the best way and it's the only way. I think we have to have the conversations and try and negotiate as we move forward and we know what's going to happen.
And we appreciate how difficult it is for you. I think we just, I mean, certainly I really love the service that we built. I think it's an excellent service, and I would just like this committee to be able to be as helpful to officers as possible, to do whatever we can to make sure that, regardless of what the new council looks like, we're helping officers build up whatever arguments we need to preserve what we know works. Because we have got a good service here in Thurrock, and if we can protect it in any way, I think that would be a good use of this committee's time. But I appreciate how much of this for officers is, is very speculative at the moment. Councillor Hartstein.
Thank you, Chair. Just something as well that's just cropped up. I'm a bit confused. The paper that was asked for was youth offending service in the context of devolution, but what we seem to have been discussing the whole time here, apart from Councillor Anderson, we've been talking about local government reorganisation. So I think this is possibly where it's also adding to the confusion, because we seem to be discussing 3, 4 and 5 models, but what the report is about is devolution. So I just wanted to share that, because that's perhaps why we're getting really quite lost in the weeds here. Thank you.
No, I think that's a fair point. Councillor Roper?
Thank you. Councillor Hartstein's more or less said something that I was thinking. There are so many unknowns. I mean, you yourself, Chair, are on the working group that's been discussing this and finding out what research has gone on to come up with the possible suggestions for unitaries that are coming forward. I think we have a team that have done a fantastic job. Some of the questions that are being asked tonight, nobody could answer, because the decision isn't even Thurrock's, it's going to be the government's decision finally. So I think what we mustn't let ourselves do is be distracted from what we're doing as a group, really looking at the strengths, identifying anything that needs to be worked on and so on, and not allow ourselves to be sideswiped, I don't know what the term is, sideswiped, so that we end up worrying about something that this group has no control over, but won't necessarily benefit the children that we're concerned about. So it's just my point of view. Thank you.
Any other comments? Right, thank you very much for the paper. And I think just comments are noted. Right, DSG, David, is that you just to dive in, or Michelle, are you doing an introduction? David? Oh, sorry, David, could you use your microphone, please?
Oh, yes. The first report is to go through the Q4 financial outturn. That's the paper that's there as
sorry, outturn.
Agenda item 7. So I can take that one through. Obviously, the paper sets out the provisional outturn for children's services for 24-25. The key headlines are that children's services reporting a provisional underspend of about £500,000 against a budget of 47.84 million after the use of reserves. That's a favourable movement from that was reported Q3 by 800,000. We do still have key pressures within the budget, certainly within 24-5, of placements. no recourse to public fund and leaving care. Some of those were addressed as part of the 25-26 budget process, and obviously that is supporting our budget within 25-26. The report also outlines the outturn for the DSG that forecasted a balanced budget after the use of reserves, and that was against a budget of 62.945 million. Carried forward for the DSG, we still remain in a small surplus of about 350,000. That will be used to support the outturn position for 25-26. Children's Service in 24-5 had a savings target of over 2 million, and all of that target, 100%, was delivered in full. The capital programme is outlined in the report, and obviously there was slippage, and the reasons are outlined in the report. I think as part of the continuous improvement journey and to support the Council's financial stability, we will be looking at the following challenges and work to be undertaken, where we'll be reviewing the forecasted outturn position to make sure we get it as accurate as we can. We will be seeking to rebase some of Children's Services budget, so we address some of the minor problems ourselves within the resources we've got. We will be reviewing the growth criteria for 25-26. So we have done that, and as part of the Q1 report, Children's Services was released its growth that it put as part of the budget, and that certainly addresses the placement overspend that was highlighted in this report in 24-25. There will be a refresh and review of the capital programme, which is what we do annually, and that will go as part of the report for 25-26 and 26-7's budget. So I'm happy to take any questions that arise. I know there was in the action log, which is where I think you mentioned the DSG, there was a question around the DSG projected deficit. We're not set up to deliver a presentation, but just I can send this afterwards. The projected deficit of the DSG in the current financial year, so 25-26, is an overspend of about £6 million. This is the result of continuous increase in demand for EHCPs, increasing complexity of need, and demand for specialist placements. So that's everything that Andrea went through within her report. The long-term forecast of the DSG management plan, so this is the projected overspend by 28-29, is around the £47 million deficit mark. Obviously, that reflects or continues the projection of current EHCP numbers. It also reflects the expansion of the local offer within Thurrock, so seeking to increase additional place within Treetops Free School, and also the continued increase in numbers from the change in the EHCPs of post-16, post-18 students that we are supporting. The Thurrock Schools Forum has set up a local offer subgroup